When I got a letter about, a note about the silence thing that I brought up the other day, I'm not going to wait till Saturday with it. I might as well hash out one small point of it here. Several points came up in the note, because it is a big problem, this whole question of silence. And of course, one of the big central problems is the problem of work. If you're working with machines, and if you are doing the kind of work where things need to be explained, obviously you have to talk. I mean, if it's a real explanation is required, then talking is required, because there are some things that you just can't explain by sign language. If they're just simple things, you can explain by sign language, but complicated jobs require talking. Now, see, the way I figure it is this: our life is supposed to be so simple that the kind of things that one does require a minimum of communication. See, I mean, the idea of sign language in our life is based on the idea that you go out and you're going to work, say, with some cows, or you're going to work with some pigs or something like that. And they're usually, I mean, the normal dealings with animals don't require that many signs. I mean, it's unless they're bringing forth their young and that kind of thing. I suppose there are obviously complications are involved in that. But I mean, the simple, ordinary work that a monk does. I mean, you give a man a shovel and you say, dig, and you dig this way, from here to here. You dig. See, that can be done with one sign. And then after that, no more signs are necessary. So the idea, the life is based on the proposition that you're doing such simple work, and that the life is altogether so simple that communication is not necessary. You buy the whole package. See, now this is the idea behind it, so that sign language fits into this life because very few signs are necessary. The things are so simple I mean, you give the potatoes. See. All you need is one sign. You don't have to make any further sign, just the sign for the thing. And the man catches on and he does it. Now, if we are going to complicate the life, and we're not going to, we've already done it. See, if we're going to complicate the life, then you can't expect the things to be the same. Obviously, it's not going to make the life less complicated if you just invent 5,000 more signs. This, as far as I'm concerned, it isn't solving the thing. It's keeping, so to speak, a vestige of the past. See, I mean, it's having a complicated life and acting as if we still were the people that we used to be, but we're not. See, so it seems to me that in a situation like that, perhaps it might be simpler to have a minimum of talking at the works and so forth, rather than complicate it with a whole lot more new signs. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's much simpler if it's something that has to be said necessarily, and you can't say it simply by signs. It's much simpler to talk a few words. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. It requires more discipline. That's correct. And then what they have to do is get that discipline. You see. Yeah.
Sometimes you can show a person.
Yeah. Of course, it depends what you're doing. Depends what you're doing. But when jobs get really complicated, they perhaps require a great deal of talking. But I would say, you mean with talking you can tell them, or do you just show them? It depends what you're doing. See, if you're handling meat, it's not too hard. I mean, they got to pack the stuff up, or you show them how to operate the cryovac thing or whatever it is, and that can be shown. That's possible, and that's simple enough. And I would say that a lot of the farms building work in your area, see, the cheese part and the packing part and so forth, is of that kind. You can show a person. There's no talking required much around there, I would say. With the ordinary normal jobs, the big executive jobs, that's another matter. But the normal jobs of you pack the cheese and you put the stuff in here. And don't send it out wobbling all around because it'll be busted and that sort of thing. And this can be explained real simple. But if the life gets more and more complicated, there cease to be things that are that simple. And then if you have to get into a talking, there's no point, I would say, in inventing 5 million new signs. It's better to just talk simply. But then people have to have the discipline. I don't mean this discipline, but... So anyway, that's part of the problem. But we'll get back to that on Saturday when we're talking more about this whole question of silence. In other words, it's not simple at all. See, it's if the life were what it was 30 years ago, there would be not much of a problem. But now that the life is what it is now, it becomes extremely difficult. Yeah?
Why do some of the brothers, you tell them a simple way to do something, and they stand there and expect you to explain it? People's reasons for it.
Of course, it depends on the people, too. It depends on the people. Depends on the person. Depends on the person you're up against, who you're looking at. You give it sort of a cross-eyed look over here. Alka, you've been working for him? But it's true. I mean, it depends on the person. And I would say, too, that's, of course, another angle is it's important in the novitiate that you learn to work. And you learn how to work in the circumstances that you have in a Trappist monastery. That's why it's necessary for, especially Brother Coleman should really be drilling you guys in how to do jobs, you know, and tell you how to do these things. And then when you get off on your own, you know a great deal of things. See, I mean, a person in the novitiate should learn the normal work that you do in the monastery, so you shouldn't have to be taught any of the normal things. And by now, the dishwashing and that sort of stuff, there shouldn't be too much explanation of that. Well, we're getting close to Christmas. You know that it is 2 weeks today, Christmas. So, that's the way Christmas is. It sure sneaks up on you. Easter, you've got a good Easter delay. So Easter doesn't, because you're so hungry most of the time. But Christmas, it's not. But here it is. It's 2 weeks from today. And just, I'd hate to go through Advent without saying something about Advent for everybody. I'm not going to give a whole long talk on it, but just take tonight's Magnificat antiphon, for example. I suppose you have the same one. Sion renovabilis. Oh, Sion, you will be renewed. You tell me what this is all about. Tell me what you can get out of this. See, because these are good things. There's a lot packed into these. Sion, you will be renewed, and you will see your just one, who is coming in thy midst, or in the midst of you. Now, what's that all about? Who's Sion, anyway? Yeah? Thomas?
The whole people of Israel.
Jerusalem, the whole people of Israel, the church, and anybody else? Us, and the individual. See? It's both the church and the individual. So therefore, now of course this is not, when you hear an antiphon like this, you just don't concentrate on the aesthetic beauty of it. I mean, it has a meaning. So now, something is being promised, so that when the Redeemer comes at Christmas, there is this special coming of Christ at Christmas. This is one of the grace of Christmas, is that Christ comes to us in our heart in a new way. There is a renewal. Sion, you will be renewed. Christmas is coming with a promise of renewal. Okay? So that therefore, this isn't just imagination, this isn't just a sales talk, this is something real. So that we can believe and hope that in 2 weeks, not only will we have the mail and candy in the refectory maybe, and a Christmas tree somewhere, or perhaps many Christmas trees, not only that, not only the crib and all that stuff, but there will be an interior renewal. See? And in proportion as we desire this renewal, it will take place in us. And this is the purpose, so this is why the church gives you these antiphons, so you to think about. And you will see your just one. What do you mean, your just one? How does that fit in with anything? What's that all about, your just one? Just one? Not two? This is a proclamation of divine unity. You see, you will see your just one. What about it, yes? Christ, who is coming to, what's justice? It's order. He's coming to set everything in order. See, to put everything the way it ought to be. And he is the one who is going to make life what it should be instead of a disordered chaos. He's going to put it back into order. See, this, of course, the main hope of the church there is that the coming of Christ, the true King, is going to finally set the world in order. Well, whether this is going to happen this Christmas or not, I don't know. But I mean, this is what we eventually hope for from Christ. He's going to come and set the whole world in order. And he is coming within us, in the midst of the church and in our own hearts. Then Sunday, for example, one of these, yes? What?
Another thought that just came to me was, especially the first Christians, that expecting the second coming.
Yeah, well, we're expecting the second coming too, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, listen to they had a much greater realization.
Yeah. Well, they did. Of course, they expected the second coming immediately, you know, within their own lifetime almost. Well, we still do. I mean, but the whole thing has become very mysterious because of this lapse of time. But the fact remains that our Lord is coming again. See, there is going to be a second coming, and it is at this second coming that everything is going to be set right. Not in the sense that we're going to all live on earth in happiness, but things are, all the disorders are going to be rectified. And we will all live a new life in justice, but it won't be this kind of life. It won't be on earth. Or maybe it will be on earth, but it'll have to be a new creation. And Sunday, for example, you've got this. Veniat Dominus et non tardabit. This will be one of the antiphons for all the week. It'll be Vespers, and Lauds. The Lord will come, and he non tardabit. What's non tardabit? Some brother tell me what's non tardabit. Well, Brother Anthony. He won't delay. He won't be late. Tardabit, tardus is late. See, he won't go on. He won't delay. He will come, and he will illuminabit abscondita tenebrarum. He will bring light to the hidden places of the shadows in our hearts. So we've got plenty of hidden places and shadows, and he's going to bring light to these hidden places and shadows, which we don't have now. So these are things these are realities. These aren't just words. These are things that are going to happen. Renewal, order, light, coming from a renewed presence of Christ, a deeper presence. He's present already in our soul, but there will be a deeper presence, a renewal of his presence in us. See? Now, these are the things that we are hoping for, rather than just a kind of a vague, sentimental looking forward to. Won't it be so nice kneeling there by the crib and hearing, so maybe somebody will hide a music box under it and it will tinkle or something. That happened. When did that happen? Last year? It's always happening. Corpus Christi. Oh yeah, well that's right. That was really something. That was really something. That threw the whole choir into a turmoil. But that was part of the decoration. There was a music box that was supposed to be part of it. It had a harp, and then they had this music box was tinkling outside the. Well, Irish background to that one. Now, finishing up stability this time and next time. When does one sin against the vow of stability? Because this is what you want to know when you've got these vows, is you want to look out that you don't suddenly find yourself in the soup with regard. Now, what are the most obvious sins against the vow of stability? How do you sin against the vow of stability? Not that I'm trying to draw up a blueprint, but yes. If you just walk out, then there are two kinds of just walking out. Let's what's the worst kind of walking out? Apostasy. What's the other kind? Flight. Apostasy and flight. See, these are the two big sins against the vow of stability, the most obvious ones. What is apostasy? Brother Dunstan. No, this isn't. This is just religious apostasy. Apostasy from religious life. What is this, Brother Finbar? That's right. You'd leave, and of course with one very important qualification. Illegally, without permission. See, you leave without permission, secretly or otherwise, with no intention of returning. See, so that here a person who has got solemn vows, strictly speaking, I suppose a simple professed can't apostatize, strictly speaking, because I don't think so. I think it has to be solemn vows before you can have an apostasy. But the man with solemn vows takes off completely, or rather perpetual. You got to have perpetual vows. A simple temporary vows, I don't think apostatize. I think somebody with simple perpetual vows could, but we don't have simple perpetual vows. So the man with solemn or permanent vows leaves with the idea that he is not going to have nothing more to do with religion, and he has no permission, and he just goes. See, he just disappears. Yeah, I think so. That can be had. This has been done. This has been done. This fellow that Reverend Father was always visiting in San Francisco, that's what he did. How did he do it? Well, how he did it was he was out with permission anyway. See, but he had his suit and he had all his stuff, and he was out. He'd been given a leave of absence to go and stay with somebody, and he was going to come back in a week or something like that. And he left. As far as I understand it, he left this person's house, saying he was going to the monastery, and then just and really took off. See, so but a person could apostatize without just take off. Maybe make friends with somebody up the road and then take off up there and, hey, lend me a suit. I'm leaving this place or something, and they can lend you a suit. Yeah?
Did McNamara or that man that was
Oh, no. No, No, he was only an oblate. He was only in here 3 weeks, about a month. Yeah.
Yeah, books sometimes I read something about you had been here for something.
He was next to me in choir. Oh, haven't I told the great imposter stories to any of you guys yet? Oh, I don't want to take the whole time telling, but it was really funny. He showed up. He was Dom Walter, I think, was his guardian angel, and he was between me and Dom Walter. See, either Dom Walter or the guy on the other side, and he showed up, for work. And I mean, in those days they didn't screen him or anything like that. He just showed up in the guest house and said, "I want to enter," and I said, "Fine, come on in." And he entered, and so he appeared this way, and he appeared for work. The first I saw him, he appeared for work one afternoon. And he appears with brand new overalls and a whole new outfit and a freshman dink from, one of those little skull caps that they wear in colleges. And he had that on top of his head. I said, what the heck kind of outfit is this? This guy's really dressed for the part. You see, he really thinks and so he was horsing around all the time, and he was a great sign maker, and he'd be working in the vineyard, and he'd eat grapes, and he'd talk, and he was totally irregular in every respect. And we were down there. This was a real hot time, the end of August. And we were down by the woodshed cutting down those weeds that were 10 feet high. And it was really hot, and everybody was having a terrible time. He was getting madder and madder and madder. So finally he starts waving the siren and go, da-da-dee-da, da-da-dee-da. The idea, what are we, the slaves in the Volga boatmen or something like that? Yeah.
Like a movie, his life.
Well, they better come down here. I'll give them some information. And then what else did he do? Well, the day before he left, he was getting lower and lower and lower. See? And he was sitting next to me in prayer. We had the Office of the Dead, and we had the second nocturne. And it was this responsory, qui portas areas convergisti et vitatis infernum, and so forth, and it was the last responsory. And so, all right, you say that 3 times. And we said, qui portas areas convergisti et vitatis infernum, qui portas areas convergisti et vitatis. And then we started again. He said, 3 times. He was fed up with us. And so the next day he left. So maybe that was the thing that finished him. He had to have 3 times the portas areas convergisti. It was more than he could stand. But maybe it was just the Office of the Dead that finished him. But he didn't apostatize. He was here. He left legitimately. So back to stability. The thing is, now, if a man apostatizes, what happens to him? Supposing that Brother X decides, I'm going to apostatize. I heard about this in the conference, and it sounds, it's easier than I thought, so I'm going to do it. See? So he gets, supposing he just, I'll go in my work clothes. See? So he gets in his work clothes and puts on his overalls without the scapular. See? And he gets into his coveralls and then so forth, and then goes around and visits the steel building in the absence of Brother Clement and finds some money lying around and so forth, and puts it into work clothes and takes a pickup truck and off down the road. See, now as soon as he goes out the gate, what's his condition? He's heading down the road in the pickup truck with besides he's liable to persecution for having stolen money from the steel building. Yeah.
He's in solemn vows.
He's in solemn vows. He's excommunicated. First thing, he's excommunicated. As soon as he gets outside the gate, he's excommunicated. See? He's got to get a fair distance away. I mean, he can change his mind before he gets to the blinker, and he's all right. But yeah.
Would he be excommunicated because of his he couldn't fulfill what he wanted to do?
No, he's got to do it. He's got to do it. See, if he
serious sin involved in before that.
There's a serious sin if he just does it interiorly. I mean, supposing he's just sitting in his I don't know, he's just sitting down on the grand parlor putting on his shoes as I'm getting ready to go, and he's thinking, I'm going to go. See, and he makes up his mind. I've had it here. I'm through. I'm going to go. See, well that's already a grave sin. If he's absolutely sure. See. Not if you just sort of, gee, wouldn't it be nice, and that sort of thing. But for heaven's sakes, anybody who's scrupulous, don't start worrying about this, If you get the thought going, wouldn't it be nice, or what a time I could have if I were only in London or something like that. Okay, well, that's not a sin. But I mean, the man makes up his mind interiorly. And then flight. What's the difference between flight and apostasy? What's flight? Yeah,
well, why you did say, I'm going to leave this house and go to another?
That's right. Yeah, I mean, supposing the person says, I'm just fed up with this place, I'm going to Georgia. See, this is no place for me. I got to get a better monastery, and my father isn't just won't see the light, so I'm going to go. See, all right. Well, he sins gravely against the vow of stability. What else happens to him? Anything else? Well, first of all, he does this. So the man with the work clothes, he gets in the pickup truck, and he's got enough money for enough gas to get to Georgia. So, first of all, he arrives in Georgia. What happens? Yeah? The abbot can't admit him, first of all. He's not allowed in, see. Oh, what can the abbot do there? He can put him up overnight. That's all, see. The abbot can't admit him unless he promises that he's going to go back to his own monastery when things are straightened out. See, when he comes to his senses, he's going to go home. See. Now, what about his juridical condition? Is he in any kind of a jam? Anybody? Yeah, you should know this. We've had this, haven't we, in your time? He's excommunicated, but it's a different kind of excommunication. What's the difference? Yeah. Well, no, you can't just go to confession. It's just a little more complicated than that. Yeah.
When would you present to the Pope on that?
That's right. The apostasy is reserved to the Holy See. See, to get lifted for that's got to go to Rome. But this other one, it's reserved to who? To his own abbot. His own, not any abbot, but his own abbot. See? So that what happens then? All right, he arrives in Georgia, and Dom Augustine gets on the phone and say, hey, here's one of your brothers here. And he claims he doesn't want to come back. What am I going to do with him? And he says he'll be good. And he says he wants to then Reverend Park can say, all right, he can have absolution. And then they can straighten the thing out. And in either case, of course, when the excommunication is getting straightened out, see, when it goes to the Holy See, of course, it gets into these nasty curia people's hands. And then they have all kinds of things to say about what's going to be done. But in any case, when an excommunication is being lifted, they tell you what you got to do. See, I mean, they don't just say, "Okay, buddy, now you're not excommunicated anymore." You've got to do this and you've got to do this. See, and they give you a good stiff penance too. I mean, so if somebody's apostatized, for example, well, it'll go to Rome, and it'll come back that he has got to, say, do penance in this, or go someplace and do the following things, and he is not reinstated. And supposing he's a priest, for example, he may have a hard time getting reinstated and carrying on his priestly functions and so forth. If he had an office in a monastery, he shouldn't get it back and all that sort of thing. So there are all sorts of real tough conditions are involved in this. But those are the two main sins. Now, supposing... What could be some other sins? I mean, supposing now a person just simply forces his way out. I mean, he forces the superior to let him go. So put it that way. See, this can be done. I mean, so supposing he just simply wants to get out, and he doesn't want to get excommunicated. He doesn't want to apostatize. He doesn't want flight. He just wants out. See. And so there are ways of doing that too. I mean, he just simply makes life so miserable for the superior. The superior says, "Oh, well, then for heaven's sakes, get out." See? Well, now, what about that? What would you say about that? Yeah?
I would think he would at least be flight.
Well, he's not in flight. He's not in flight. He's not apostatized. I mean, he gets the superior says, "Okay, to get rid of you, I'll get your dispensation for you. I'll write to Rome and get the dispensation, and you're gone." What about that? He's got a dispensation, so he's out legitimately. Well, it's not legitimate. It's not fully legitimate. I suppose if he's got it, he's got it. I mean, if he's... strictly speaking, though, something that is granted without reason isn't valid. But still, I mean, if the superiors and so forth have all gone into the thing, I suppose he can accept it. But I would say that if he is doing this without any valid reason at all, he's sinning mortally, see, against his vow of stability. That's to say, he's making it look legitimate, but he's forcing his way out. And that, I would say, of course, this is a very hard thing to determine, yeah?
Wondering if the superior can do that, let him go just because he's king.
Well, of course, you see, the thing, from the point of view of the superior, if it gets to be too hot from that point of view, and if the person is causing trouble to other people and so forth, the superior is certainly within his rights for the sake of the community and for the sake of, well, it might not be the wisest thing to do, perhaps he should find some other way of doing it, but there come times when superiors just simply say, well, if that's the way it is, let him go. See? And yes?
Can't run for give him 6 months leave.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way they usually do it. That's the way those things usually happen. But you see, what I'm pointing out, what I want to get down to this is the practical point about this is if someday you get really having an awful lot of trouble with this vow, see, the day may come when you get so burned up that you may want to try something like this, see. And you may just simply, it may just get to be the point where you just feel that you're going to twist Reverend Father's arm and get him to, well, watch out, see. Because this is the kind of a situation where that the vow is looking for. It's got to be really legitimate, see. And it's not something that you should be forcing. This is the real problem of stability, I would say, here. Where you get, I mean, of all the people that have left, I don't know what their motives were and all that sort of thing, but there always is a question when you've got somebody who's got no real reason for going, or apparently has no real reason for going. If he manages to just force his way out, I don't know, see. This is very hard to say, and of course the person himself can't say, but this is something where a confessor, the confessor is usually the man who has the most to offer in a thing like this. And if a person is really talking the thing over with him, and if a confessor backs you, then you're all right, see. But be careful that you haven't got him to you haven't twisted his arm too. Well, I mean, if in all sincerity and all reasonableness a confessor says that you're okay, well then there's certainly no sin. But you have to be very careful that you don't just force your way out with one of these things. And then, of course, finally remember that from the point of view of venial sin against the vow of stability, if a person knows that he's weak in this regard, in terms of wanting to leave and that sort of thing, and he deliberately allows himself to spend long periods daydreaming about some place where everything is just as wonderful as it could possibly be, it's just not here, and how nice it would be there, and so forth. You've got to recognize the fact that kind of thinking really undermines you, see. And if you allow yourself to think long periods like that, it's going to have an effect. It's going to be hard to, because what happens if you undermine your foundations with that kind of thinking, and then something really comes along, you're going to have an awful hard time with it. So in other words, you've got to be quite realistic and practical on this question of sins against the vow of stability. If a person is thinking deliberately about this sort of thing, he could be sinning venially against the vow. If he's just entertaining these kind of thoughts all the time and frequently and habitually, especially if somebody tells him, you better not, kid, it's getting a little dangerous. But then, on the other hand, for heaven's sakes, don't be scrupulous. Because the normal thing that hits everybody as soon as things get a little bit irritating, the obvious reaction is to think of someplace else where it's nicer. See? And this is no sin, and there's no fault in it whatever. It's just a purely natural, understandable reaction. And so don't start worrying about this, but the point is, don't go deliberately entertaining thoughts about going someplace else, because it makes things all the tougher if something does come up. Adjutorium Roster and Nominee Dog.